Ever see someone's entire personality change in an instant? That's exactly what happened with Thanos in Squid Game Season 2. 1 minute trembling during red light, green light, the next eliminating players without blinking an eye. Like a switch flipping in a dark room, his transformations stem from something hidden beneath the surface. In this breakdown, I'm showing you the exact moment Thanos crossed the line from scared contestant to complete psychopath. Fear can transform into something much darker when survival is on the line, especially with certain catalysts. The Thanos you thought you knew, he never existed. The breaking point from fear to frenzy. Let's talk about that first game of red light, green light. Everyone remembers it, right? That moment when the cheerful children's game turned into a bloodbath. But while we were all focused on the players dropping like flies, something even more terrifying was happening in plain sight: the birth of a monster. When Thanos first stepped onto that field, he wasn't the cold-blooded maniac we'd come to fear. Fear consumed him entirely. Eyes darting wildly, sweat streaming down his face, body trembling as the reality of the game sank in. Just another desperate contestant with debts to pay and a past to escape. The mechanical whir of the doll's head turning sent visible shudders through his frame. Each gunshot made him flinch, his chest heaving with panicked breaths. Fear is supposed to be a survival mechanism. It's supposed to keep you alive. But for Thanos, fear became the enemy. When that doll's head rotated with its haunting creak and the first bodies hit the ground with hollow thuds, something in his eyes changed. Not because he suddenly found courage, but because he reached for something in his pocket. That little vial he carried was his escape hatch from humanity itself. The moment that liquid hit his system, a transformation swept through him. His pupils expanded to black pools, erratic movements steadied, trembling ceased. Something calculating and cold took control as screams echoed across the field. The other players who survived that first round witnessed this metamorphosis. Player 218, who stood mere feet away during the chaos, later told investigators that standing next to Thanos was like watching someone's soul leave their body. She described how in the midst of gunfire and panic, his unfocused terror instantly crystallized into an eerie calm that felt more threatening than the guns themselves. The truly chilling part: most killers hesitate before their first murder. There's remorse, recognition of crossing a moral line. But when Thanos eliminated his first player, tripping that old man who had briefly helped him minutes earlier, there was nothing. No pause, no flicker of regret, just efficient movement and dead eyes watching another human die. During the stampede, when players rushed towards safety, camera footage shows Thanos methodically scanning the crowd while others fought blindly forward. He deliberately positioned weaker players in the line of fire. 3 deaths during that chaos have been directly attributed to his strategic maneuvering. The drug rewired his operating system completely. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid anymore, said player 67, who bunked near him that first night, voice still shaking at the memory. It was like he wasn't even there anymore, like someone else was driving. What makes this transformation so disturbing is how complete it was. The switch flipped in that field and never reversed. While other players struggled with nightmares between games, Thanos slept soundly. While they formed alliances out of human need, he formed strategies. What chemical compound could override basic human empathy so thoroughly? How could it transform a terrified crypto bro into a remorseless predator between heartbeats? Thanos didn't break under the game's pressure. The games gave him the perfect excuse to become what he always wanted: someone unburdened by fear, conscience, or connection. That drug wasn't creating something new. It was releasing something caged inside him all along. The man who entered that field died during red light, green light, not by gunfire, but by his own hand. What walked off that blood-soaked ground was something else, entirely. Something that saw the remaining games not as a desperate fight for survival, but as a playground where normal rules didn't apply. The chemistry of chaos, option 3, nails it perfectly. That vial contained liquid that fundamentally rewired Thanos into something unrecognizable. The Mingle game showcased this transformation in its full, terrifying glory. While everyone else was fighting for survival, there was Thanos, hooking arms with Namu, dancing and laughing like he was at some twisted carnival rather than a death match. The stark contrast between him and player 337, standing next to them, barely holding it together, tells you everything about what that chemical cocktail was doing to his brain. Think about what we're actually witnessing here. A substance powerful enough to strip away a person's natural fear response while simultaneously cranking up their aggression and destroying their capacity for empathy. Those are the fundamental guardrails of human behavior, the evolutionary safety mechanisms that keep us from self-destruction. Thanos chemically bypassed them all, like a hacker overriding a computer's security protocols, leaving the system vulnerable and dangerous. The colorful candies hidden in his cross necklace weren't keeping his faith alive. They were engineering a monster. Each time he reached for that necklace, he was making a conscious choice to disconnect himself from reality. What's particularly chilling is how frequently he dosed himself. This wasn't a one-time breakdown, it was a sustained chemical assault on his own humanity that he maintained voluntarily throughout the games. The Mingle game gives us the clearest window into how completely the drug had transformed him. Remember when he eliminated Gongsu? He kicked the man to the floor and then ran toward the room screaming, "You out. Let's go," like he'd just scored the winning touchdown in a game. There was zero hesitation, zero remorse, just pure celebration of the brutality. By this point, the horror of what was happening around him registered as entertainment. This was someone beyond adrenaline or survival instinct. What we're seeing is a person chemically incapable of processing the moral weight of his actions. Like a volatile chemical reaction, once the substance entered his system, it catalyzed a complete transformation that couldn't be reversed. While other players grappled with impossible choices and psychological trauma, Thanos operated in an entirely different reality. One where the games were a playground where normal rules didn't apply. You can trace the drug's path through his system by watching his behavior. Before his most violent outbursts, his pupils would dilate dramatically, turning his eyes into black pools, windows opening to a chemical void where conscience couldn't follow. This physiological response is the smoking gun, the clear evidence of a chemical override of his natural responses. The substance was likely a cocktail combining stimulants, which increase alertness and aggression, with dissociatives, which detach one from reality and pain, creating essentially a perfect predator, fearless, remorseless, and unbothered by others' suffering. The transformation wasn't gradual, it was immediate, like flipping a switch. The most disturbing question remains. Was this drug specifically designed for the games? Did Thanos arrive with his own personal demon, or was this something provided by the game makers to ensure maximum chaos? Either possibility is terrifying. If it was his creation, he came prepared to become a monster. If supplied by the organization, they were engineering not just the games, but the players themselves. We'll never know exactly what was in that vial, but we can see its effects with perfect clarity. The substance fundamentally altered who Thanos was at a neurochemical level, creating an entirely new personality that saw mass death as entertainment and human suffering as inconsequential. The Mongi vendetta, the substance in that vial, might have unleashed Thanos' inner demons. But his obsession with Mongi wasn't chemically manufactured. It was the activation of a vendetta that existed long before either man set foot in those deadly games. When Thanos spotted Mongi among the 456 players, a cold calculation clicked into place that transcended the tournament itself. Their history was financially devastating, personally humiliating, and primed to explode into violence at the first opportunity. Before pink jumpsuits, and deadly childhood games, Thanos was hawking digital dreams as a crypto promoter. He was the architect of financial devastation, orchestrating a scheme that collapsed under its own hollow promises, burying ordinary people like Mongi beneath 15.2 billion won in losses. He carried this responsibility into the games. Thousands of investors who trusted him, followed his advice, and lost everything. This burden materialized when he recognized Mongi's face among the contestants. For most people, catastrophic failure triggers soul searching, not for Thanos. What makes him truly dangerous is his ability to transform personal shame into outward aggression. When faced with consequences, Thanos processed rage instead of guilt. Mongi became a dark mirror reflecting the fraudster beneath Thanos' carefully constructed facade, a walking embodiment of truths he desperately wanted buried. That moment when Thanos shoved food into Mongi's face during the meal was targeted psychological warfare. It was Thanos declaring without words, "I see you. I know you know who I am, and I'm still in control." Every contestant fought for survival, but Thanos fought for something more precious: his narrative. The story where he wasn't a failure, where someone else deserved punishment for his mistakes. The chemical courage amplified his obsession to pathological levels. What might have remained uncomfortable avoidance in the outside world became a life-or-death fixation within the game's pressure cooker. With each encounter, Thanos' pattern crystallized. He played to erase Mongi, the living reminder of his failures. Every confrontation was calculated to establish dominance over the one person who could expose his past. Mongi became Thanos' psychological anchor. As long as he had someone to blame, someone to focus his hatred on, he avoided self-reflection. His vendetta provided structure to his madness, a purpose beyond mere survival. While other players grappled with moral dilemmas, Thanos pursued a simplistic mission: destroy the evidence of who he used to be. The weaponization of shame is the real tragedy. In Thanos' warped reality, eliminating Mongi meant erasing his accountability. Every aggressive action was a desperate attempt to rewrite history, to replace Thanos, the failed crypto scammer, with Thanos, the dominant player. As the games progressed, their conflict intensified beyond normal competition tensions. Each challenge became another opportunity for Thanos to assert dominance, to prove to himself, more than anyone, that he was superior to those he had wronged. The volatile combination of hatred and amphetamines ultimately determined both men's fates. The answer to their conflict came in their final confrontation, a moment of poetic justice. Just as Thanos was poised to eliminate Mongi, his fixation left him vulnerable. The fork that pierced his neck was the physical manifestation of karma catching up in real time, his obsession becoming the very instrument of his downfall. The ultimate power trip, the rock, paper, scissors game. Karma caught up with Thanos through Mongi's desperate strike, but long before that fork pierced his neck, he'd already revealed the true depths of his madness. There's a special kind of horror that emerges when someone stops seeing others as humans and starts viewing them as game pieces instead. That's exactly what happened when Thanos forced his own teammates, Semi and Minsu, to play a simple childhood game with the highest possible stakes: their lives. This was Thanos transforming himself from player to puppet master. Most contestants, when faced with team elimination decisions, wrestled with the moral weight crushing down on them. They understood the gravity of choosing who lives and who dies, not Thanos. Where others saw an impossible choice, he saw a twisted form of entertainment. The setup itself tells you everything about how far gone Thanos had become. Here were Semi and Minsu, people who had trusted him enough to join his team, now forced into a corner where one would die based on a hand signal. Rock crushes scissors, scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock. One lives, one dies. Game over. What makes this moment particularly chilling is Thanos' complete detachment while orchestrating it. No hesitation in his eyes, no flicker of doubt crossing his face, as he pressured his teammates into this deadly version of a children's game. The cold calculation behind his blank stare revealed someone who had completely disconnected from human suffering. Semi's trembling hands and Minsu's pleading eyes meant nothing to him. They were merely characters in his personal drama. What was this rock, paper, scissors game really about? You might wonder why anyone would devise such a method for deciding who lives or dies. The answer reveals something darker than mere cruelty. This wasn't strategy or survival. This was Thanos playing God, maintaining absolute control while appearing to remove himself from responsibility for the outcome. Death became his spectator sport with himself as the audience. Perhaps the most disturbing element was Thanos' genuine belief that his solution was fair. In his warped reality, random chance had become more just than making an actual decision based on strategy or merit. This perverse logic reveals how completely his moral compass had shattered. Death by rock. Paper scissors somehow seemed reasonable to him, as if the randomness absolved him of responsibility. The horror on the faces of other players as they witnessed this grotesque spectacle didn't register with Thanos. He couldn't comprehend why they didn't appreciate his elegant solution to the problem of elimination. The gap between his perception and everyone else's had grown so vast that he existed in his own twisted reality. This moment marks a fundamental shift in Thanos' character. He was no longer just another desperate contestant doing whatever it took to survive. He had become something far more dangerous, someone actively reshaping the games into his own perverse vision, where human lives were reduced to pawns for his personal entertainment. The silence that hung in the air as Semi and Minsu realized what was happening speaks volumes. Their shallow breathing, the sweat beading on their foreheads. These weren't volunteers, they were pressured participants, coerced into a situation where refusal likely meant immediate elimination. In many ways, this moment represents Thanos at his most fundamentally broken. Not because it was his most violent act, but because it revealed how completely he had detached from humanity. He was turning killing into something recreational, a spectacle for his own amusement. Here's the thing about our friend Thanos. He's the ultimate case study in moral erosion. What makes his story so unsettling isn't that he was some born villain. It's how quickly that hidden drug transformed an ordinary, frightened man into something monstrous. His character arc shows us the fragility of human nature when exposed to desperation and chemical influence. The line between normal person and psychopath is razor thin. When survival hangs in the balance, would you resist that chemical shortcut to courage? Remember how his pupils dilated as humanity drained away, leaving behind only cold calculation where compassion once lived. That transformation could happen to anyone